want to ask you a question that's been on my mind.
Okay, interesting.
Is it possible for a relationship to get better after infidelity?
So I'm going to skip over the why you're asking that question. I don't want to be the podcast that says if you want to improve your relationship, go cheat. That's not cool, right?
Yeah, that's not quite it.
People can be okay being really unhappy for very long periods of time. So it's the kind of pain that's like, yo, I'm here, this is gonna suck, and also I have friends. There's a specific way to be able to go through disclosure that is helpful as opposed to tearing people down. When people do it on their own, they do things like, was he better than me in bed?
Ooh, stop that.
You can't be in a trusting relationship with someone who will lie to you.
That makes it tough.
Yeah, I mean, that's like the first rule. Truth.
Yeah.
Give me the truth. If you can't give me the truth, then we cannot have a healthy relationship. Period. I shouldn't say this out loud, but I love working with infidelity. I don't know what it is about. Like cue me or something. Be like,
Artlist.io.
Hello! Welcome to Rainbow Dreamcatcher,
The Love Podcast.
My name is Nilla, and I am a licensed marriage and family therapist and relationship coach. I help people find the skills they need to have happy and healthy relationships.
And I'm Big Sexy, her loving husband and co-host, here to provide levity.
All the funnies.
So some things right off the top. My voice was sound a little bit different. I'm just coming off of chest congestion.
Yeah, we just call it cooties. Poor thing.
Yeah. Also, you might hear some background noise. It was a very beautiful day today.
It is a very beautiful
It was
day.
too beautiful to record inside. So we are currently on a terrace. Lovely view of the sea and the city. So we wanted to be out here and record this episode out here.
So what are we talking about today?
Well, today, as I mentioned, I wanted to try something a little different.
Okay.
I want to ask you a question that's been on my mind.
Okay, interesting.
Is it possible for a relationship to get better after infidelity?
So I'm going to skip over the why you're asking that question. It's actually interesting. I get questioned about infidelity a lot. It's something I really enjoy working with. That is a complicated answer to, I think, a unique question, because I think it's out there, and I think it's important that it's out there, that people can experience infidelity and afterwards rebuild their relationship so that it is stronger than it was before. That being said, I don't want to be the podcast that says if you want to improve your relationship, go cheat. That's not cool, right?
Yeah, that's not quite it.
So the wording of the question to me is a little bit interesting, right? So the first thing I'd say is that for most relationships, if we define infidelity as deception and betrayal, then most relationships who experience deception and betrayal will have significant damage, right? So before we ever get to the like, can we build it stronger? Are we going to be good? The first thing you got to know is, well, whatever building you had there before that you're trying to build stronger, what you actually did was just blow it the F up. Right? So unless you want to blow everything up and have the potential to build something, then infidelity is not the way to get stronger, right?
And don't be going to your significant other and saying, look, I listened to this podcast. I apparently got to cheat on you to make everything better. It's not what's being said.
Listen, I'm trying to do, and you know what? People do crazy, like mental pretzels like that. They'll say things like, I did that because I wanted to help us. I was trying to help us out.
Yeah.
I mean, and there's something to be said for that, actually. Let's maybe back up first.
Okay.
Because I think it's important that we have an idea of what we mean when we say infidelity, right?
Okay.
First and foremost, we are not always talking about sex, even though we're often talking about sex. Most of the folks that I get coming through my coaching practice especially in my therapy practice, depending on the histories of the folks, are people who have experienced sexual infidelity or emotional infidelity. More rare, I get people who experience financial infidelity. Sometimes that's combined because people who have affairs or who are doing things that are secretive often have other addictions. They're spending money on those affairs, right? So there's kind of like a combo of infidelities that can take place.
So I got another question.
Okay.
So, how in your experience,
Yeah.
how many people have gotten better post infidelity?
Yeah, I find, and I've been doing this over maybe 10 years, a little bit, almost just a little bit over a decade, I'd say. The people that I see, it's about a third, right? About a third of people break up. There's just, this is not going to survive.
Right.
They are not, somebody's like, I'm out. This is it. Either this has happened before, it's happened repeatedly, or this is just a hard line. It's a deal breaker for the other partner. You did this, I'm out. Right? About a third of people are like that. About a third of people stay together, but they are really miserable. Yeah, that's the thing about being a relationship and marriage therapist and coach, is that you realize that people can be okay being really unhappy for very long periods of time.
Yeah.
And there are reasons, right? People got kids, people got whole lives, people have like public images to uphold, they have church families, their own families, religion, values. Like there's so many reasons that people decide, in spite of infidelity, betrayal, deception, pain, hurt, all that stuff, to stay. And they're just going to stay. And I don't know, I think they kind of go through what I call cheap forgiveness. Have you ever heard that term?
Nope. I mean, I've heard of each word individually. I understand cheap.
So put them together. What would you say if you had to guess?
Cheap forgiveness.
What's cheap forgiveness?
So if I went to a dollar store,
okay,
I'm buying me some forgiveness.
Wow, we're really gonna do that. Okay.
The forgiveness I got doesn't really hold any significant weight.
What do you get? Gotta guess the dollar store.
They're cheap. And you get some.
They got good stuff in the dollar store. I've gotten some really great things.
Yeah, but forgiveness ain't one of them.
Right. Okay. So for this example,
right. So when you get cheap forgiveness, then it's not like wholehearted. It's not moving forward. It is, I forgive you enough to not blow up this life. Yeah,
that's exactly what it is, right?
Yeah.
Another way to think of it, I think of it sometimes is like the forgiveness of convenience. That I'm not really forgiving you, but I have decided I'm going to put this down because I got other stuff I got to deal with.
Right.
We got our kids to deal with. We got our bills to deal with. We got our whatevers to deal with.
But this ain't healed.
So this ain't healed, but I'm going to just put it down and I'm just not even really going to pay attention to it. I hope it's just going to get better. And it kind of sort of does, right? Like, people don't stay in anguish forever. Just like for most injuries, right? Some people do, but for most injuries, right? I'm going to hurt for a while. Sometimes I'm going to hurt for a long period of time. If I don't get any help for it, it's going to hurt for longer. It's going to hurt for worse. It may get better or it may stay the same, right? It may get worse, but I won't have any guidance about how that's happening, right? I'll just kind of be like living my life and trying to figure out how do I walk and how do I run and how do I sleep and how do I eat, right?
That's what you need therapy for.
With all this pain. Well, that's what you need therapy for. And for healthy people, sometimes healthy people just need coaching, right? So like therapy is like a medical doctor. If I'm super sick and I need a diagnosis, I go to a therapist. If I am injured and in recovery, I go to a physical therapist. That's relationship coaching, right? So I'm healthy otherwise, except for this injury. I'm going to go to coaching for that, right? So about a third of people go through that convenience of forgiveness.
Okay.
So then here's the big, bright question. How do I know if I am in the third of people? My relationship is in the third of people who actually do get better, who actually do heal and return to previous relationship functioning, as I would say.
I was going to ask.
Sometimes better relationship functioning.
I was going to ask if in that last third, there is another third or so.
What do you mean by another third?
Right. So
there's a third of a third of a third
of
I don't do math.
Of the people who get because you have the ones who break up.
Yes.
You have the ones who stay together but are miserable.
Misery.
But you have the ones who may stay together and are good
Mm-hmm.
and return to, like you said, relationship normalcy or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
But you also have many of those whose relationship now improve. Right.
Yes.
So
yes, actually,
in that top third,
oh, that's an interesting
there
question.
might be a spectrum within that top third.
There's definitely a spectrum within that top third. Again, I like to liken it to physical injury.
Okay.
First, you got to start with where were you before?
Right.
Right. Now, if before I got injured, I was 20 years old in excellent health, had never had any injuries or breakages before, right? I'm going to expect to kind of bounce back from that. And in some ways, I can bounce back better. I can learn how not to injure myself anymore. I can learn how to protect the area and shore up and build the area, right?
Right.
And that's different depending on who you are. Now, if I'm, I don't know, me, right, who is not those things, right? And I get the exact same injury, the healing path for me is going to look really, really different,
right? Because
I bring all this other stuff with me. I bring at least a few more years than 20-something.
At least a few.
A lot more years than 20-something. I bring previous injuries, right? Some of which I'm aware of, and some of which, like, honestly, truth be told, y'all, we don't know. We are not super, like, great intuitives about our own bodies and our own emotional experiences. So sometimes we bring these injuries, and that's the thing about infidelity that I think makes it so painful no matter how it ends up, is that when you experience an infidelity or a betrayal, it's not just that injury, right? Okay. It brings back all of the other injuries, right? It calls back, I like to think of it as it calls back other pain, right? So it's the kind of pain that's like, yo, I'm here, this is gonna suck, and also I have friends. And you know what? My friends know you. They've been with you since you were like 6 and 15 and the last relationship you were in. We all gonna kind of come chill here. Right? And we're gonna all kind of like be messing with you right now. So it's a difficult thing to experience. And that's just for the person that was betrayed. For the person that actually did the betraying, you would think they kind of get off scot-free to a certain extent. They don't.
No, I can't imagine
they don't. They have their own kind of different personal health, right? Now, this is assuming, when I'm talking about this side of it, this is assuming someone who is genuinely remorseful, who wants to build a relationship with the person, with their partner, right? And who, for various reasons, right, either made different decisions that was really painful and hurtful, but wants to do something different, right?
They're really working on fixing.
They're really working on how to repair, right? So forgiveness has different parts, right? It's not just that I say that I forgive you. It's not just that I deal with my own emotions. What really helps forgiveness is amends. And amends is only complete when someone understands how they hurt me, right? That they hurt me and how they hurt me, and can take steps to ensure they don't hurt me that same way again. And that's the part that people often lose, right? Is what are the steps that you're going to take to ensure that this doesn't happen to me again? And it can't just be like, because I said so.
Right.
Because I promised.
That's not action.
No, it's not action. And healing is all about action, right? So, and like all injuries, right? If I do nothing, eventually a certain kind of healing will appear, right? Like maybe I won't hurt anymore, but I will have a limp. Or maybe I won't hurt anymore, but
an emotional limp.
An emotional limp, yeah. It's a real thing, you know. But I will lose some portion of my emotional functioning as the trade-off for that, right? And I can get along well enough, right? Like people walk around with limps all the time.
Yeah.
But I'd really, if I can, I'd prefer not to.
Right. You have to go to that's why you go to coach.
Yeah. So but that didn't answer your question, right? So of the third, how percentage?
So then just basically break it down, like how many folks the third get better.
Yeah.
Right. What does that look like?
Yeah.
What does better look like?
So okay. So that's a good question. Better, first of all, let's talk in terms of time.
Okay.
Better first of all, is how we learn skills and maintain them over time. So a lot of times I have to gauge whether people have actually gotten better in the long term as opposed to the short term, because there's a difference there. I can actually help most people in the short term. Real talk, right? There are things that you can do that will be helpful. There are things that you can do that will be hurtful. There are certain things that people naturally do around this kind of injury that, I can give you some guidance about how not to do that, right? But long term, there are two crucial time periods that it's really important for folks who have healed from infidelity. The first is 1 year after you have started to try to fix the infidelity. And the reason I say 1 year is that most people actually get to that place of like healing, whether they've worked at it or not worked at it. They get to that semi-healing place in about a year. So no matter what, if people decide they're going to stay together, they're going to fight it out. It's going to be really awful at the beginning, just like any injury. It's going to be really terrible. And then we're going to settle. It's going to adjust. It's going to get a little bit better. It's not going to be so painful. I'm going to figure out ways to work around the injury. And so right around a year, generally people, no matter what, are feeling really, really good about their relationship. What does that look like? Talking more frequently, having more honest conversations, learning how to navigate really big negative emotions like anger and jealousy and fear. People tend to figure that stuff out.
And how does romance,
sex,
come into
romance?
play? Yeah.
It's so odd how sex changes after infidelity. A couple of things can happen depending on the partners. Sometimes folks are just like, you ain't never touching this again. Right? It's like a complete like standoff. Some folks are actually just the opposite. It's almost kind of like re-establishing a connection to this person. And one way to do that, we ground very well in our own bodies. And so oftentimes folks who have experienced infidelity will suddenly be like, my partner, it's really weird. I hurt them terribly. They are in so much pain and all they want to do is have sex. It's like the biggest mind fuck. Yeah. Can we say the F word on here?
Of course we can.
It's the biggest mind fuck.
We're an adult podcast.
It's the biggest mind fuck because, like, I don't know, this person is angry at me. They tell me how much they hate me, and all they want to do is have sex with me. The year time frame is actually kind of crucial. What happens is that folks get better because time passes. They learn how to manage and navigate some of those negative emotions, sometimes with guidance, sometimes not. And then right around a year is about the time another crisis happens, and you determine whether the work you actually engaged in is helpful or whether you didn't do any work at all, because that's when the pain comes back, almost always in the first year. So actually I look at long-term over the course of 5 years. And, in terms of 5 years, folks who have successfully navigated forgiveness, making amends, readjusting behavior, and rebuilding trust in their relationship, if they're still together and have done that for 5 years, then I would call that successful. It's a long-term prognosis.
Okay. And then how does we started this journey together.
Yeah.
There was a break in infidelity.
Yes.
We worked on repairing.
Yes.
But now we look back and suddenly our relationship is better.
Mm-hmm.
What does that tend to look like in relationships?
So the first thing is to take a lot of I'm going to use some language here. There are promises and behaviors and commitments that are often unspoken between people. And that unspoken thing shapes the way we build our lives, right? So things like, I hope I don't have to say to my partner that you should not be talking shit about me behind my back, right? I assume that is the case, right? I can't know that. And we haven't explicitly had to have that conversation to say that you are going to speak well of me when I'm not there. But we have that commitment, right? When you have a kind of devastating injury to your relationship, like betrayal or infidelity, all that unspoken stuff is out the window.
Okay.
The reason communication and trust gets better is because people are deliberate and they start doing what we call explicit behaviors, right? So this is where I am telling you specifically what I need you to do in order to rebuild trust with me. And not from a place of anger, and not from a place of punishment, right? Because those people that are miserable, what ends up happening is they start giving each other little tests, right? So I test in my head, do you really care about me? Are you really interested in me? Am I attractive to you? Like all those kinds of things start to happen. But the other person doesn't know they're having these tests. So sometimes they'll pass, very rarely. But most of the time they just fail because they don't even know why they're in this position, right? They don't understand why they're having this test over and over and over again, right? So we take that out of the like internal, where like, I guess the idea is, if you really, really love me, I wouldn't have to tell you what I need. Boo, get rid of that, get it out of here. All that is done, especially after infidelity, right? Here's an example. When people ask me about things like, should I follow the other person's telephone? Let's say there was like secretive affairs. Okay, I'm going to change everything about this situation, but I'll give you an example. A very prominent religious figure, right? Married for many years, several children, very upstanding citizen. It came out after 12 years that this person had been having an affair with his wife's best friend, who was also a member of the church, and who was, just an integral part of their family life, right? Like they knew each other's spouses, their kids played together, right? Like all the things, right? Devastating, right? Absolutely devastating. So I have my folks like that who are in that situation. The first step they have to go through is something called disclosure. And disclosure is where we get through all the nitty-gritty details so that we don't have to go over these details again, right? This isn't a matter of like telling somebody enough so that they shut up. That's not the point, right? It's telling people enough so that when they look back at their lives, they have an accurate picture of what that part of their life was like. Because when they feel betrayed, it's because I don't know what my life was supposed to be. I thought my life with you was one way, and now it's something else.
Right.
And it's something I don't like. I didn't expect. It hurts. I'm angry about it, right? And so people need information to be able to do that. There's a specific way to be able to go through disclosure that is helpful as opposed to tearing people down. When people do it on their own, they do things like, was he better than me in bed? Ooh, stop that.
Oh.
You don't want to do comparison. What you want to do is get curious about what was happening, right? Not in terms of the nitty gritty, like, did you do that position? Did you do that one specific thing? That will drive you crazy. That's crazy.
You'll never spank that body.
Why you spank that body? What about that person? Here's one that comes up all the time. The affair partner knows about the wife or husband. Mm-hmm. The wife or husband doesn't know about the affair partner. How come you tell them the truth? That's hard.
Right.
How come you tell them the truth? How did they know something that I didn't know about my own life? Oh, that's a hard one to get over. So anyway, all these questions. So the first is disclosure, and we go through a very deep dive process to help people have productive conversations about what took place. Once we're done with those productive conversations, we got to come to some agreements. And that's where the explicit part of that is, right? Yeah. So there are low cost, mid cost, high cost behaviors. Take a gander at what some of those are for folks who have experienced infidelity. What would you guess if I told you that, like, okay, so we just talked about all this stuff. Now we got to build trust again. Right. So here's some behaviors, and they are low, mid, and high cost. Give me some examples of low, mid, high cost behaviors in your world.
I would think that, you mean behaviors from whose perspective?
Well, it's interesting. This is actually for both parties to agree to, but for ease of conversation, let's say the person that betrayed their partner. Okay. So the person that was unfaithful.
Did the person who betrayed their partner have to now adopt?
Yes.
That are low
cost, mid cost, and high cost. Yes.
Okay. I would say a low cost behavior.
Yeah.
Would be checking in.
Yeah.
Right. Just a general check-in.
Yeah, something that's, the action will take me too much time. Yeah. Something I could have been doing anyway.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, but very low cost.
I think a mid-cost behavior may be sacrificing some social events that the possible third party might go to, be at,
Yeah.
be involved at. Like you might have to no longer go to game night because Alyssa was a game night.
Right. Who's
Y'all try to you try to all play a little chess game. There's an issue there. And then I think a high cost behavior would be like leaving work, like severing an important part of your previous makeup in order to continue the relationship.
Yeah. And one of the challenging parts of that for the person that has betrayed their partner is that generally, not always, it depends on the situation, but for most people, one of the high cost behaviors is they got to let go of that person. Like they can't be in their lives. A lot of people are like, well, we could just be friends, we could just be cool, we won't do that other thing no more. No. Right. Stop that. Right. So yeah, that's exactly right. Here's the key to that. You don't want to set up a parent-child relationship where like I'm just now over you, telling you got to check in with me, you got to leave such and such, you got to do so and so, right? That is also unbalanced and is not super healthy, doesn't lead to healthy relationships. So the trust behaviors are actually behaviors that both partners agree to, and it is explicit. And sometimes it goes on for a while, sometimes it goes on forever, but most of the time it doesn't, right? Most of the time, folks go through that explicit process until they build enough experience with the other person to reestablish trust, so that that person can behave predictably, which I need for trust. That person can demonstrate that they will honor my boundaries because we've talked about them and they're clear, right?
So now
and that's in everything, not just in terms of like sex or infidelity. That's in terms of all of the rest of life, right?
Okay, so in my viewpoint, whatever. So better now equals, okay, one party trusted the other person.
Yeah.
But the other person betrayed the trust.
Yes.
We are better now because I trust you again, and you are not betraying my trust.
Well, I'm better now because we have a clear understanding about what creates trust between us.
Okay.
Whereas before, trust just kind of happened. For most people, trust is just something that we build over time. I have experience with you. We assume it. I recognize your behavior. You behave in predictable ways, right? Yeah. Like you're reliable. Most of the time, folks are accountable for things that they do, like they say I'm sorry, or if they mess up, they make amends, that kind of thing.
Right.
I assume folks are honest in other areas of their life. If they're dishonest in different parts of their life, well, that might be an ongoing challenge because you can't be in a trusting relationship with someone who will lie to you.
That makes it tough.
Yeah, I mean that's like the first rule. Truth. Yeah. Give me the truth. If you can't give me the truth, then we cannot have a healthy relationship. Period. Like no question about that. So then first is disclosure, then is trust building, right? It's explicit trust building. And then it's understanding how to communicate negative behavior, like negative experiences, negative emotions, and how to be able to do that in a way that doesn't cause the same kind of cracks that can appear in relationships just over time. So first we work through the infidelity, then we work through the partnership. It's a long process. It's kind of like any major injury. It takes some time to heal. It's really frustrating, right? It can sometimes be painful. Sometimes it can be fun, actually, randomly. But it is always a lot of work, and it requires a significant investment from the folks that want to rebuild the relationship. The way I put it is that we don't get better at things we don't pay attention to. Right?
That makes sense.
So there's a period of time for that partnership where what you got to pay attention to is the partnership if you want to make it better. And that's why people get stronger. It's often because they are paying attention to their relationship in ways that they have not paid attention to, sometimes for decades.
Okay.
Yeah.
So the answer is definitely yes, it is possible.
100% possible.
To be stronger post-infidelity.
Yes, absolutely.
Not always probable.
It's not always probable. It's not always possible. It's not possible for everyone.
Right. Okay.
Like every time I say that it's possible, somebody comes up with like some crazy situation that's like the worst possible situation.
It's not 100% possible.
Right. Like that person stole my money and then they slept with my best friend and then they trashed my house. And like, can we get back
probably
together?
not going to get better if you're like about
No. Right. But for those relationships where there really is love, where there really is investment, it's not just possible, but it's within reach, right? It's achievable. I shouldn't say this out loud, but I love working with Infidelity. I don't know what it is about that structure, working with folks in that place, but I really enjoy helping people to learn how to heal from that kind of injury. It's rewarding.
Well, this would be a good spot to mention that if you're dealing with infidelity in your past and you want a coach to reach out to, and that is Rainbow Dreamcatcher Coaching. So you ready for a question from our listener?
I am ready for a question from our listener.
All right, this one comes from Ryan.
Yeah.
Ryan asks,
Hi,
how
Ryan.
do you put yourself in a position to be in a relationship and find someone?
I love this question. Thank you, Ryan, for this question. I get this question a lot because dating is really tough. It's the hardest thing most people do is to find themselves a mate. If you're looking for a long-term partnership, I think Dan Savage said it best. Dan Savage is a love and sex advice columnist from Seattle. He's been doing love and sex advice for about 25 years now. Shout out to Savage Love Podcast. But basically, you have to think about it this way. Everyone you date until you meet the one is a relationship that will end. And it shouldn't, right? So the first thing you have to recognize is that if I want to meet my person, I've got to meet a lot of my not person first, right? So rather than constantly looking to see if the next person is the person, assume that this person is not the person. Whoever you're dating right now, probably not the person, right? If you don't know that right now, then they're definitely not the person for you, at least in this moment. And that's okay. Instead, see what you can actually learn from and grow through and gain understanding about in the relationship as it stands, right? So that I'm not always trying to move people into different positions in my life. Like we're friends, but now I got to move you into like a relationship, or relationships, and I got to move you into like a exclusive kind of relationship. We're exclusive. Now I got to move you into marriage. Like there's kind of an always pushing people to the next stage. And I think it's really helpful to, one, recognize most people should not be going to the next stage. And to be okay with the idea that, like, it's okay if things don't work out. It doesn't mean it will never work out, but it does mean that I've got to keep searching. And that means I got to get out there. If you're swiping, it means I got to swipe. I'm sorry, it sucks. Swiping is terrible, and it's just the way people date these days.
Right.
If I am hopefully meeting people in person and either dating and or hooking up, then I have an opportunity to be able to meet other people. But you want to stay social, you want to stay engaged, you got to get out of your living room.
That helps.
Yeah.
That helps. Also, take care of yourself.
Agreed.
Self-care is important. And
so important.
I've always been an advocate of, you can't find someone if you don't know yourself.
Agreed. Well,
I mean, okay.
You have to know.
So you can find someone.
I mean, it's a good adage. I think it needs the modification, but yes.
Yes, but I think that it's hard to find. It's hard to know what you're looking for if you don't know yourself.
Agreed.
And you can stumble across whoever, but will that person be the right one or whatever? And will you know and you may end up with the wrong person for a long time.
Yeah, lots of people do.
A lot of people do that.
I think most people end up with the wrong person.
Yeah.
For a period of time, at least.
At least, I think every person ends up with the wrong person for a period of time.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's a part of the whole dating scene.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Very few folks have met. It's the first person I met, first person I dated.
And we are perfect for each other. We're perfect
for each other. And we lived a long life. And then, we got married, and kids with the whole thing. And then we died together in our old age.
But that's the myth. I'll tell you, when I was a kid, and this will tell you something a little bit about kind of religious upbringing. I remember there was a story that they would tell over and over again. I remember it to this day, and I was like 6 or 7. And even at 6 or 7, I was like, what? The story was that there was a woman who was faithful. She wanted to be out there, she wanted to date, but she was faithful. She wanted to be celibate. She wanted to, keep her, the way they put it was she wanted to keep her honor. She wanted to maintain her honor, whatever that means. Basically, she didn't want to get it on, and she wanted to meet somebody. And so she prayed and prayed and prayed, and she kept not finding the right person and not finding the right person, not finding the right person. And then one day, literally, an airman dropped out of the sky in a parachute and got stuck in a tree in her yard. And she had to help that airman down. This is like 1930 something, whatever.
Okay.
She meets the airman.
So definitely not biblical times.
That's her person. They live happily ever after. And the point of that is supposed to be that, like, God will bring you the person that you're supposed to have at the moment that you're supposed to meet that person. So no matter what you do, you will meet that person. And my 6-year-old self stopped to think, like, okay, so if I marry somebody, I gotta wait till they fall into my yard.
Right.
What? If you're gonna meet somebody, you gotta get out of your comfort zone. You gotta get out of your own space. You have to be willing to expand, learn, and grow as a person. Folks that you date are going to teach you things about the world and themselves. They're going to teach you some things about yourself. And the point of dating, I think, is not just to get to the end goal of, finally, here's my person, but to actually learn about myself as I go along the way. Self-care is a good part of that, right? How do I take care of myself is a fundamental skill we need to have as adults.
And I think being aware of your personal gender identity and sexual identity
sometimes
helps.
I think sometimes, I think it depends on the person. Some people have a very strong sense of sexual identity or gender identity, and there are folks who really just don't. And it doesn't mean that they can't be partnered. It doesn't mean that they can't have healthy and loving relationships. It just means, we don't have to be finished to find partnership.
Right.
I just have to find someone who is willing to walk with the unfinished me and be open to the different possibilities that unfinished me presents. Okay. Yeah, that's the way I put that.
You need to write that book, Walking with the Unfinished Me.
I do need to write that book. I feel like I've been writing that book my entire life. Helping other people to walk through those spaces. So
listeners, if you want Nilla to write that book, chime in.
Okay, and listeners,
and tell us how much you're willing to pay for the book.
Well, yeah. First, tell us how we're going to get the time to write the book.
Right.
But if y'all are willing to support it, I'm willing to do it. I think I want to get this information out to people because I think so many people suffer unnecessarily in unhappy or unhealthy relationships when they could either be in a healthier relationship where they are or determine what prevents them from finding and engaging with healthy people, whether it's that they are not healthy themselves or that they are in some ways attracted to unhealthy kinds of structure. I don't know. Yeah.
Well, listeners, if you would like to support Rainbow Dreamcatcher, the Love Podcast, and helping Nilla write this book and give him the time, you can swing on over to rainbowdreamcatcherthelovepodcast.com. Join our Patreon, be a subscriber. The more subscribers we get, the closer and closer Nilla will be to writing that book. And you will even give you a mention in the liner notes of said book. But yeah, swing on over to rainbowdreamcatcherthelovepodcast.com. Also hit us up on social medias. We do have a GoFundMe.
Can I just mention something about that?
Yeah.
So y'all, I'm going to have just a bit of a vulnerable moment. It is really hard for me to ask for help. I struggle anytime I need help. It's an unhealthy part of myself that I'm working on. I've been working on it for a long time. And it has been really hard for me to ask for help with the podcast. So I just want to take a vulnerable moment. I just want to tell you this is really hard for me to do, but it is necessary because we are a growing enterprise. Our podcast, I think, is poised to deliver really quality content, and we need some financial assistance to do that. So I would really encourage you to please go to the GoFundMe. Whatever you can offer to support would be greatly, greatly appreciated. I don't know that I'm ever going to make a kind of like direct plea like this again because like, I don't know, I'm kind of dying a little bit inside, but
I mean, the good news is we haven't recorded, so I can just loop it,
that doesn't help.
plug it in. Anytime we need
That
it.
sounds even worse, but yeah. So thanks to those folks that have already donated to the GoFundMe. I feel your love and support, and I'm so grateful for you. And thanks for, I don't know, sitting with me through my own personal embarrassment and helping us to provide this, what I hope is a really valuable content. So
and all we can
thanks,
do
y'all.
is grow from here. So thank you guys very much. And with your support, I promise you, we will continue to grow. If you know me personally, you've heard me say my podcast is a decent podcast. It'll grow all right. But I have a feeling the Rainbow Dreamcatcher, the Love podcast, can affect people worldwide and actually really move numbers and change people's lives for the better. And we can do that with your support. So swing on over to rainbowdreamcatcherthelovepodcast.com. Subscribe to our Patreon and go to our GoFundMe. The link for the GoFundMe is funky, but you can go to GoFundMe and just search for Rainbow Dreamcatcher, the Love Podcast, and you'll see our podcast there. Or check our social medias. I post about it, a few times a week, so it's also there. And on Instagram, you can find us at Rainbow Dreamcatcher, the Love Pod, or Rainbow Dreamcatcher, the Love Podcast on Facebook. And we appreciate you all so very much for being our support.
Yeah, and I just want to give a little shout out. We have our third guest. He sometimes makes an appearance. I am just having the hardest time actually staying on camera because he keeps falling asleep, and it's the cutest thing. So, give a little shout out to Fox. He's struggling to be able to keep up after 13 years. So
he was coughing and wanted to bark. He must be tired, so I just gave him a place to rest in my arms.
Yep,
which he is doing. So if you made it this far in this video, you're welcome.
Awesome.
But with that being said,
this has been Rainbow Dreamcatcher.